Okay, let's watch Ben Shapiro and clashing over the $15 minimum wage debate with Khanna.
Khanna, he represents California's 17th congressional district located in the heart of Silicon Valley. He is serving his third term. Representative Khanna is, of course, a Democrat. And for that, we're extremely grateful because it's fun to have on people from the other party and actually talk through the issues. Representative Khanna, thanks so much for joining the show.
And thank you for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, you bet. So let's talk about minimum wage because you sort of made the news last week when you were criticized for some comments that you made about the minimum wage and small businesses. The implication seemed to be that if businesses weren't paying a higher minimum wage, then maybe they didn't deserve to be in business. So what did you mean by those comments?
Well, let me clarify it. I am a strong supporter of small business. I understand the need for small business. I do believe in a $15 minimum wage. My belief is that the Amazons, Targets, Walmarts can easily pay that. But I understand that small businesses may have a difficult time in doing that. That's why it needs to be gradual, and that's why we need to have tax credits and other.
This is recent. Hold on, I got to pee.
So that they can do that.
So let's talk about the actual policy, the actual $15 minimum wage. So I obviously am an opponent of $15 minimum wage. When it comes to the minimum wage, there are a bevy of studies, including Congressional Budget Office studies, suggesting that it depresses employment, that for people who actually receive the minimum wage, of course, they get paid more. But for a lot of other people, it pushes them out of the job market because it is not like businesses actually just have a giant Scrooge McDuck money bank out back, and they're just holding a bunch of cash out there in order to somehow disadvantage their employees, that there is a labor market in which there are a lot of people willing to work for a particular wage, and that they're paying the labor, essentially what the labor is willing to accept in order to work at these particular jobs. When you're talking about competitive job markets, especially at the lower end of the wage spectrum, isn't it true that there is a supply and demand issue that actually develops the wage? Or why do you think that it's artificially low, in other words?
Sure. Let me suggest the two places we disagree. Your view, as I understand it, is this is a contract between two free individuals. Why is the government, the state, getting involved in trying to set the price? My view is that in certain cases, especially where you have monopsonies, where you have a high concentration in labor markets, there are only a few buyers. It's not a truly competitive market. It's actually a market failure. And so you have a wage that is under the competitive market price. In fact, Milton Friedman in 1976 wrote about this possibility that monopsonies could distort the market wage. Second, and I think this is just a good faith disagreement, you would argue people have genuine bargaining power, and you have this concept of negative freedom, that the state shouldn't interfere. My view is that more of positive freedom, that people actually need basic support to be able to bargain effectively. And I don't think that.
So I have to address something that Ben did here. He went fast and loose immediately with a quick changeover here. Okay, one. He says businesses don't have a pool of money to, fuck over the employees. That's literally not true. It's called profits, okay? They absolutely do have a pool of money that they distribute back to their shareholders rather than stakeholders. And he didn't want to address that point or continue on with that point, which is why he did a quick flip back to, and also the market rates are what determines what wages are, okay? Like, it's literally not true. When legislation happens, or when a minimum wage increase occurs, or when, let's say, America tomorrow had strong labor unions and there was a collective bargaining agreement that could be stricken, which could be struck with the appropriate business or whatever the fuck, right? Like, if that were to occur, then you would reconfigure your profit margin. That's it. That's literally what you are supposed to do. But Ben Shapiro, on the other hand, does not want to talk about that, so he immediately goes back to the free market, and that's how the wages are determined. Okay, well, that's precisely why the counterpoint to that, not only is the first point that he made completely a falsehood, you just literally have to reconfigure your business strategy. We can have a conversation around like whether that is impossible to do so or not, but he could be talking about small businesses that are operating on 2 to 5%. Wait, hold on. That's not even true. We're not even talking about that. He said big corporations do not have a gigantic, vast sums of money. So he's literally defending corporations.
Isn't it true that there is when you're talking about the labor is willing to accept a particular wage, and that they're back, And there's because who actually receive the minimum wage, of course, they get paid more. But for a lot of other people, it pushes them out of the job market because it is not like businesses actually just have a giant Scrooge McDuck money bank out back and they're just holding a bunch of cash out there in order to somehow, disadvantage their employees. That there is a labor market in which there are a lot of people willing to.
See, notice how he went from businesses don't have like gigantic piles of cash that they're just like holding away from their employees. And then he turned around and started talking about the wage prices being determined by the labor market itself. It'd be in a free market economy. First of all, wrong. They do still have a sum of profits that they could be redistributing back to the workers themselves, because they are creating and generating that value and generating that value on capital that existed within the business and not getting paid a percentage of it. Okay. And two, he follows that up by saying there are people willing to work for a particular wage.
And that they're paying.
Okay, what the fuck does that, how does that matter? What you were talking about originally was that businesses don't have a sum. Businesses can't afford to pay a $15 minimum wage. It's not like they're like, as though businesses actually fucking, again, magnanimously decide to pay their workers more when profits increase. That doesn't happen.
The labor, essentially what the labor is willing to accept in order to work at these particular jobs. When you're talking about competitive job markets, especially at the lower end of the wage spectrum, isn't it true that there is a supply and demand issue that actually develops the wage? Or why do you think that it's artificially low, in other words?
Sure. Let me suggest the two places we disagree.
Would you ever debate Ben Shapiro? Yes. And also, if you think I'm doing a better job than Khanna or something in this circumstance, is because I am able to stop the video, pause on an argument, and talk about it for 15 minutes and clarify my position for those of you who don't understand what I was trying to say. And that's very different than having a fucking face-to-face conversation. Like, it's just not.
Your view, as I understand it, is this is a contract between two free individuals. Why is the government, the state, getting involved in trying to set the price? My view is that in certain cases, especially where you have monopsonies, where you have a high concentration in labor markets, there are only a few buyers. It's not a truly competitive market. It's actually a market failure. And so you have a wage that is under the competitive market price. In fact, Milton Friedman in 1976 wrote about this possibility that monopsonies could distort the market wage. Second, and I think this is just a good faith disagreement, you would argue people have genuine bargaining power, and you have this concept of negative freedom, that the state shouldn't interfere. My view is that more of positive freedom, that people actually need basic support to be able to bargain effectively. And I don't think that there's true equal bargaining power often.
So there are a couple of issues that I see in some of the stuff that you're saying here, just on the specific level. Obviously, the vast majority of employees at places like Amazon are actually not making the minimum wage. The fact is that the minimum wage is.
Well, a good question there is, what happened? Was it because Amazon's profit margins increased? Well, profit margins increasing have nothing to do with fucking the wages increasing, because that goes against like the free market argument that he was launching originally. Because if you increase wages, that means that your profit margins are going to decrease for the shareholders. It's just how it works. Sorry, that's literally how it fucking works. But Amazon did not increase their wages out of nowhere. Okay, the reason why Amazon increased their wages is because they were forced to increase their wages.
Is only being made by something like 2.3% of all wage earners in the United States. About 50% of those wage earners are under the age of 25. And when you artificially boost the minimum wage, what you actually end up doing is making it harder for people who actually need the minimum wage jobs to get those jobs, because you have artificially created a base in the labor market from which employers are going to draw. So in other words, a $15 wage is the kind of wage that you pay to somebody who graduated from college. It's not typically the kind of wage that you pay for somebody who graduated from high school.
So the thing I find to be really distasteful about conservatives arguing about this shit is whenever they say like, well, minimum wage is supposed to be a high school job, right? Or it's too high now. Like $15 is too high. It's like, dog, the fucking minimum wage jobs are not just supplementary income for high school students, okay? And even if it was supplementary income for high school students, it should at least factor in how much value that they're generating. and they certainly are generating $15 an hour worth of fucking value. Like, come on. Come the fuck on, dude. Anyone who has ever worked a single fucking hour flipping a burger recognizes that the amount of labor that they're putting in far outweighs the amount of fucking value that they're adding on to McDonald's, far outweighs the amount of money McDonald's is making in that singular fucking hour. Like, come on. And the reality is, if it wasn't the case, then McDonald's would not pay them whatever the fuck they're paying them currently. Okay, if you're getting $7.25 an hour working at Mickey D's in motherfucking Alabama, okay, you are putting in significantly more value. You're bringing in significantly more value to McDonald's than the $7. You are. If that wasn't the case, McDonald's would not pay you. They would literally look for a different way to go about it. Okay, they would try to automate that part of the process. An argument that conservatives also recognize because they use it as a counterpoint all the time. If minimum wage is increased, then it's not going to be profitable for corporations to hire people and therefore switch it out to automated robots. Okay. Then you have to find an alternative solution to that then. If you are going to engage in self-checkout or, burger flipping automated robots. And they are doing that already. They're slowly phasing out all of these parts of the each individual sector is subject to automation.
And you see this historically with the minimum wage. When the federal minimum wage was increased, then people who went to high school had a much higher employment rate before, and then the minimum wage was increased, and then the unemployment rate among high school educated rose dramatically. It is not racially equal that way. Actually, minimum wage increases have disproportionately hit black and brown people without college degrees, particularly. So why is raising the minimum wage overall a good idea?
Well, but you're right. Right now, maybe it's 2.3%. I take your word for the study, but that's at $7.25. And there are 30 million or so of Americans who make between $7.25 and $15. Now, I think the studies go both ways. Some people have argued, and there's studies showing that it increases productivity, it makes workers happier, it actually increases a business's profitability. I agree, there's studies showing that that may not be the case. One interesting study I saw is that what it really forces businesses to do is require high school as a credential. And this a fair point would be saying that this may make it more difficult for those who haven't finished high school to get one of those jobs. But for 90% of Americans who have a high school degree, they will be able to get that job and pay more. So I guess the studies there are studies all over the place on this.
Here's what I don't understand. Okay, I got to run his argument back. I'm sorry, guys.
Artificially boost the minimum wage. What you actually end up doing is making it harder for people who actually need the minimum wage jobs to get those jobs because you have artificially created a base in the labor market from which employers are going to draw. So in other words,
so what is happening here is, again, the argument is like you're increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour, which somehow still creates a fucking emptiness where there are jobs that are less than $15 an hour, and you're going to push people away to those jobs, or people that would take other jobs for $15 an hour are going to go flip burgers. Like, yeah, dude, I went to college to become an accountant, but I realized that my entry level accountant job is going to pay me $15 an hour, and so is fucking flipping burgers and standing on my 2 goddamn feet for 7 hours on end and get absolutely berated by dumb fucks who are drunk. That's also going to pay me $15 an hour. So instead of going to my accountant job, I'm going to go flip burgers instead. No, motherfucker. No one is going to do that. Okay. Like, oh, well, McDonald's is now going to hire people with CPAs, like with certifications instead of like people who don't have that kind of certification. Like, okay, where are those people going to go? Why are people automatically going to fucking work at McDonald's? Are there other jobs that are paying less than the federal minimum wage all of a sudden, magically? Like, there are so many questions that I have whenever people talk about this sort of thing, right? Like, whenever people talk about increasing the minimum wage, they make it seem as though there are like other jobs in the market that are going to be lower than minimum wage. You know what I mean? And people are going to work on that. Shit, take us on. You're going to skip college and now take on that debt. That's fine. There is an alternative to that. Also, coming from Ben Shapiro, this is really fucking cute. How many goddamn YouTube videos has he created about how college is actually not a necessity and you shouldn't go because it's going to turn you into a gender queer Marxist? So like, what? Now all of a sudden he cares about people going to college? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? He doesn't want people to go to college anyway. Why is this now all of a sudden an argument? And if an educated labor force is more competitive at the international level for the United States of America, then, which I agree, by the way, that's a talking point that I would agree with, that, access to college education, affordable college education, or free college education is a necessity, that the government should provide that as a basic amenity, as most other fucking comparable OECD nations do, then do something about that separately and individually by making college fucking free. Himbo Baggin, thank you for the 5 tier 1 gift subs.
A $15 wage is the kind of wage that you pay to somebody who graduated from college. It's not typically the kind of wage that you pay for somebody who graduated from high school. And
do you seriously, those two jobs should make the same? No. What will end up happening is, if a burger flipper, okay, guys, there are two competing forces in this argument. You have the employers and you have the employees. You have the labor force and you have the owners of the labor force, okay? Increasing the $15 minimum wage automatically allows the labor force to have an upper hand, a marginal upper hand in bargaining power, so that the employers, who also need to be fucking competitive in the wages that they offer, will have to turn around and increase the wages for the other jobs that are in existence. Because now the worker could fucking say, well, okay, I went and got $100,000 in debt, and now I know how to fucking, now I got my certification, I got my Series 7, my Series 66, and you're telling me that I'm going to make the same amount of money as someone who didn't go to college and is now working at McDonald's? Fuck no. Therefore, those people now have to, in order to be competitive, will increase their wages as well. That's why it's the minimum wage and not the fucking maximum wage, okay? But supply side economics is so fucking deeply ingrained in the mind of Americans and like Western capitalists that you literally cannot comprehend a world beyond it where you never think about the other side of the equation. There are two competing factions in this argument, and Ben only argues from the point of view of one side.
And you see this historically with the minimum wage. When the federal minimum wage was increased, then people who went to high school had a much higher employment rate before, and then the minimum wage was increased, and then the unemployment rate among high school educated rose dramatically. It is not racially equal that way, actually. Minimum wage increases have disproportionately hit black and brown people without college degrees, particularly. So why is raising the minimum wage overall a good idea?
Well, but you're right. Right now, maybe it's 2.3%. I take your word for the study, but that's at $7.25. And there are 30 million or so of Americans who make between $7.25 and $15. Now, I think their studies go both ways. Some people have argued, and there's studies showing that it increases productivity, it makes workers happier, it actually...
For the people who constantly talk about inflation, that's why there are fucking checks. That's why there are controls. Like, what is the government there to do? The government should be able to control inflation, okay? Like, I don't understand why people constantly say, like, oh, well, inflation is
I agree. There's
not preventable.
That may not be the case. One interesting study I saw is that what it really forces businesses to do is require high school as a credential. And this, a fair point would be saying that this may make it more difficult for those who haven't finished high school to get one of those jobs. But for 90% of Americans who have a high school degree, they will be able to get that job and pay more. So I guess the studies there are studies all over the place on this. My view is that the country would be better off with a higher wage that would help productivity, help the happiness of our employees.
No, I mean, the simple kind of rebuttal to that is if it really improved profitability for businesses to provide higher wages, then they would do it. Meaning you wouldn't need the government to actually step in and force them to do it, being that businesses are profit-driven primarily.
It's a fair point. That's if you believe that businesses always are acting in their rational long-term interest. My view is that sometimes businesses are very short-term focused and may not be making the long-term investments. But
he should fucking hit him back with, you're a libertarian, Ben. Don't you feel like the government operating at the behest of businesses allows them to make risky financial decisions that we've seen time and time again, whether it's like stock buybacks or whether it's not having any fucking liquid, like a barrier of liquidity in a time when they could potentially survive because they know for a fucking fact that the government is always going to help them out. Like that's government intervention that is actually against the free market thriving. And that's something that Khanna and others will, advocate against from time to time.
The second case is, let me ask you, are there any times you believe that the government should interfere? For example, overtime laws, we're required to pay time and a half. Would you support that? There are a lot of times that the state has made regulations to say that this helps the bargaining power and makes for a better labor market.
Yeah, and I'm very much against virtually all of that. I'm extremely libertarian when it comes.
Yeah, extremely libertarian, my guy. Fucking defending the monarchy yesterday. Extremely libertarian, by the way. He's not extremely libertarian. It's fucking bullshit. Imagine being against overtime pay passed on by the pushed by the government. Ben Shapiro literally in the past has argued against the civil rights legislation. Like he literally thought that like any sort of equal opportunity law that goes against segregation would be something that he's against. Also, things that Ben Shapiro is against is abortion, for example. Extremely libertarian literally will make the argument that the government should control what women can and can't do to their bodies. But libertarian, by the way, extremely libertarian, as a matter of fact. Extremely libertarian, but loves when the American military rolls over every fucking Muslim nation on the planet. Libertarian, by the way. Like, he's not a libertarian. It's fucking completely made up.
It comes to labor markets, particularly because I believe
sadly, companies then outsource the job overseas if they can do it cheaper. I have been affected by outsourcing many times. Not a good thing, I know, and it would only do this specific legislation, wouldn't it? Brother, companies have been outsourcing regardless of the fucking wage increases. You recognize that, right? What we're talking about now is the service industry jobs that are the remainder jobs as in the aftermath of rampant outsourcing that already happened when Deng won and America and American working class lost, okay? The game show chat is at 6 p.m.
that monopoly is actually created by some of the regulatory innovations that people have come up with.
Like, what are you going to do? You're going to outsource your fucking Uber driver, or you're going to outsource? Well, they're not even going to be beholden to any of this because they're technically contractors and not considered employees at all. And those massive liberal companies are doing everything they can to make sure that they don't fucking that they are not considered employees and whatnot. But how the fuck are you going to outsource, I don't know, someone who works at McDonald's who's flipping burgers? Like, do you think that they're going to be able to flip the burger in China and then fucking ship it back here? It's not even going to be outsourced to China anymore because Chinese labor conditions have improved dramatically over the past couple decades. So what are they going to fucking ship it out to Indonesia? Hey, can I get a burger? You're going to walk up to McDonald's. The burger is going to be flipped in Indonesia and fucking flown back out to America? Maybe.
In fact, I think there's a reason why big corporations have typically pushed for a higher minimum wage when it becomes clear this is going to happen, because you're right, Amazon can absorb that blow a lot more easily than the mom and pop shop that is down the street. It actually increases their ability to drive other people out of the market.
Now he cares about fucking big businesses driving out the competition of little businesses and small businesses. This is fucking bullshit, okay? He does not give a single fuck about small businesses. Oh, no, Amazon is going to be able to pay, employees $15 an hour or even higher than that, whereas small businesses will not be able to compete. Okay, then why the fuck did you originally say that big businesses did not have a pile of cash like Scrooge McDuck lying around to be able to pay their employees, and yet they refuse to do so? But now you're saying they do actually have that pile of cash, and small businesses are the ones who don't have that pile of cash. What an interesting argument that Ben Shapiro launched literally in the first minute and then contradicted immediately in the 6th minute. And yes, the big businesses do have a competitive advantage over small businesses when minimum wages increase, which is precisely why minimum wage increases are adjusted to the size of your business and the revenue of your business. This is something that you can fix with technocratic legislation, okay? And it has been done. It's been done all around the goddamn country. That's why that's why it's not an immediate rate increase. It's not immediately $15 tomorrow. And that's why oftentimes there's a 2-tier rate increase like you have in California, for example. So small businesses have an easier time. Small businesses have an easier time adjusting to the minimum wage increase. He's such a bad faith debater. Fuck him. He's a piece of shit human. Yeah. Now you're on to something. Good take, but every other take, bad take. Yeah, okay, dude. Like, just saying something is a good take or a bad take is not a fucking argument. You know that, right? Anyway, here is a real fucking good argument, though. It is top of the hour every hour. It's time for a 50-second ad break. Boys, sorry if you don't like the ads, but we got to run them. If you no longer want to see the ads, though, you can subscribe with $5 or for free. Hypothetically, let's say you didn't want to see ads when you're watching the Hasanabi broadcast. Well, hypothetically, what you could do is technically get your wife's boyfriend's Amazon Prime account and connect it to your Twitch account to get one free Twitch Prime subscription a month and use it on, hypothetically, your favorite broadcaster / streamer. Hopefully, it's Hasanabi, even though he is a leftist and I hate him. Here's the 60-second ad break now. Imagine Hasanabi actually thinks we get the ads. Most people don't because they have ad block and it works, but sometimes it doesn't fucking happen, so... When you sound too sniveling for empathy, so you make up an ideology to bait the audience and pwn the libs? What? I don't know if that's me or Ben you're talking about.
Everybody is required to pay a higher wage than Amazon.
Why do we care about small business owners? Basically, English for petite bourgeoisie. What do we care about small business owners? I mean, okay, don't care about small business owners. See how far that takes you in your legislative agenda. Ultimately, you still have to act like you care about small business owners. And I do, to a certain degree, care about small business owners. Not every fucking small business owner is like the piece of shit manager that you had that wants to fuck you over. Some of them are unironically ma and pa's, okay? A lot of them are just like singularly owned or family owned businesses, so it doesn't really matter. They're not cucked in the same degree by like a minimum wage increase. But there are still, hypothetically, some small businesses that are small mom and pop shops that employ 1 or 2 individuals. And you have to fucking care about their safety and security. If you can't pay your employees a living wage, you shouldn't be in business. I don't disagree with that either, by the way. I think it's ridiculous to say, oh, sorry, my small business can only survive if I fucking starve my employees. All right, well, then fucking your small business should not exist. Like, you should still get help from the government to ensure that you can actually launch a small business that pays living wages. But this notion that, like, the only reason my small business is surviving is because I employ children and skirt by, you know, the lack of child labor practices, or the only reason why my business can survive is because I fucking enslave my labor force, is not an argument that you can use. Ultimately, these sorts of legislative accomplishments seek to make everyone's lives a little bit better. And the hilarious part about this that most people, again, fail to recognize is when small business owners and the millions of people that work within small businesses or work for minimum wages actually get an increase in their pay, as we have seen time and time again, what happens to the lower percentile when they end the lowest percentile of workers? What happens when they increase their wages or get cash? They fucking spend it, okay? They spend it, and they spend it immediately. So what will end up happening to small businesses, unironically, is increase their fucking profits, because now you have people who have more purchasing power. Now you will have people who can at least take one day off in the week to go out and be able to eat at your local mom and pop shop. That's how it works. Keep going.
Can spread that out over the price of its products. It can spread it out over its 83% market share in like the book market. It can upcharge people on the product in a way that small mom and pop stores cannot. Increase in minimum wage obviously disproportionately affects places that have 3 employees as opposed to places that have 300 employees, of which 30 are actually minimum wage employees.
Well, you're right about that, and this is.
It's like, this argument is also silly as fuck, because there are examples around the world that you can look to. You make it seem as though like every company is a massive multinational corporation. Every company that operates in places like Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Canada, every single one of them are actually massive chains, and not a single small business actually exists in these countries. Well, that's not the case. So clearly you can still have fucking small businesses in places like Norway.
You're right that the impact on certain small businesses is harder, and that we have to take action to help those small businesses. I mean, I acknowledge that that point. I will say, though, that in small communities, rural communities, often you have the case that these are highly concentrated markets. And in that case, you have employers having a lot more monopsony power to be able to set the wage in not truly competitive markets. But to the extent that my comments in the past were not sensitive enough in the way I phrased it to the challenges of small business, I acknowledge that challenge. I agree with you that it's going to be much harder for certain.
Also, what about the fucking small businesses currently that pay more than the minimum wage? Like, it's so strange. Like Ben and other conservatives, whenever they argue against a minimum wage increase, they are literally making an argument for why the minimum wage should be increased. Because the reality is companies will pay you whatever they can fucking get away with, okay? Whatever they can get away with. So if you have a minimum wage, that's set at $7.25, some people are just going to pay you $7.25 and budget according to the $7.25. That's just how it is. They're like, this is what we can pay them minimum. Like, no one is going to fucking increase their wages for no reason other than the fact that someone is forcing them to. And that's precisely how they operate. And that's how they're going to continue operating. And that's why you need to increase it.
Small businesses, and we have to be honest about it. I mean, we can't, I want to engage in an honest conversation.
And whenever someone, sorry, I know I keep cutting him off, but whenever someone like Ben Shapiro says, something along the lines of like, oh, well, actually, why don't we raise the minimum wage to $100 an hour, which is a argument, what is it, like ad absurdum or something? It's like just exaggerating it to the point where it's unmanageable, right? Then the counter to that should be, okay, well, why don't we do it zero? Why don't we decrease it to $0 an hour and actually have slaves? That would be incredibly fucking, that would be poggers, dude. Think about it. That'd be super fucking poggers, okay? That is a great hypothetical. Super poggers. Think about the profit margins for having human trafficking and slavery. I mean, seriously.
And to pretend that there's small businesses that aren't going to be effective and that should be helped would not be correct.
We'll get to more with Congressman Rowe.
Sorry.
Description box below. And the other big problem with a federal minimum wage is that it is federal. I mean, when we were talking about setting one standard minimum wage across an entire country where wages are extremely different.
That's the nanny state. I hate it. That's the nanny state. Stop it.
Mississippi than they are in California. In California, a $15 minimum wage in a place like your district or a place where I was living until very recently, LA, you get a $15 minimum wage. That buys you like a one-bedroom studio apartment. If you get a $15 minimum wage in Mississippi, that is literally the median wage in Mississippi. Right? There are states where there are wildly disparate numbers as far as what wages are.
Dude, imagine being able to get a fucking one-bedroom apartment in California. What part of Bakersfield, motherfucker? What are you talking about? Also, how is that a good argument? Like, how is that a good argument to be like, well, you know, places like California need a higher wage than the $15 minimum wage? Hey, newsflash, congratulations, you literally played yourself, okay? That means that the minimum wage should be even higher in a place like California. And guess what? When the federal minimum wage is $15 an hour, that allows workers and organizers and activists in a state like California to increase the minimum wage there even higher than the fucking $15 minimum wage, which is currently at like 14 and 13, depending on whether you're a small business or a big business. So pretty cool for Ben Shapiro to literally admit that $15 minimum wage in a hypothetical could potentially get you a fucking one-bedroom apartment, which is not even true.
Are actually worth it in particular states.
But in the other side of it, it's like, what? Because the conditions are horrible in fucking Mississippi, then they don't deserve more? Like, it's crazy.
Why in the world would the federal government set a federal minimum wage that is so high that it is actually at or close to, I believe the median wage in Mississippi right now is $14.23 an hour. Why would they set a median wage a minimum wage that is above the median wage in a place like Mississippi.
I wonder why.
When a minimum wage in California, $15 an hour, basically buys you a candy bar.
Well, again, this is the debate about the floor. I agree with you. In my district, $15 isn't enough. And the question is, should there be regional variance? Yes. And then the question becomes, what is the floor?
I mean, we have a federalist system, so there's a real easy solution here, right? I mean, we actually have like cities and states, and they could do this sort of thing.
Right. But the question is, there should be a national floor. And now I'm saying the floor should be $15. Do you believe there should be any floor? I mean, do you think, $7.25, I think, is unreasonable. I mean, for example, Cotton and Romney have said the floor should be $10. I think Holly is saying it should be $15, but for billion corporations, where would you set the floor?
I mean, unfortunately, there is a floor, and the floor is zero, and it's going to be felt by 1.4 million people who won't have a job come 2025 if we raise this to $15 minimum wage.
I guess my question.
Okay, again, that's not 1.4 million people that are going to be out of a job. That's 1.4 million potentially less jobs, while simultaneously lifting 4 million people out of poverty. And that is the very conservative estimate. Do you understand? Also, limiting the floor to $0 an hour is, again, slavery. You are advocating for slavery. It is an idiotic fucking counterpoint. I love that I brought it up as an absurd argument, which Ben adopts to, Ben personally adopts for no reason. Like, no one even brought that up. He was like, no, like, we should do $0 an hour. The argument there, of course, is that it should be competitive, right? Like, this way it'll be truly competitive. And in many circumstances, assholes like Ben, I don't know if he'll say this in the argument. Oh, he's saying the floor will be people out of a job. Yeah, the 1.4 million people that he's referencing, though, are not actually fucking losing their jobs, okay? It's 1.4 million people, or 1.4 million less jobs, potentially, in the most conservative estimate. That doesn't mean those people are fucking losing their jobs. It literally factors in people that have 2 jobs, for example. I have heard him say $0 an hour, though. Let's see if I misunderstood him or not.
Unfortunately, there is a floor, and the floor is zero, and it's going to be felt by 1.4 million people who won't have a job come 2025 if we raise this to $15 minimum.
Yeah, because right now with a $7.25 minimum wage, there is no unemployed people. That's not an argument. Like, you can't make the so what's up? So are there no unemployed people right now at the $7.25? Is that what the argument you're making then? If you're saying that people that lose jobs, the 1.4 million jobs that are lost are not recoverable, not replaceable, and those people are making $0 an hour. So you're currently saying that at $7.25, there are millions and millions of people that literally are making $0 an hour. Therefore, the current minimum wage is also failing people. If you were looking at this in good faith.
Minimum wage.
I guess my question is for you, would you support any national federal minimum wage at any standard?
No. I mean, I think free labor is able to bargain. And if you can come up with a case where you have an actual monopoly that is violating labor law in its attempts to cram down a wage on a person who's unwilling to accept it, first of all, we have an amendment to the Constitution that prevents involuntary servitude. And second of all, bargaining power.
Well, but I think that that's also inappropriate. Why do we even have an amendment that prohibits involuntary servitude? I don't get it. I think slavery should be re-implemented. If people want to sell themselves into slavery, then they should be able to do that. I mean, I don't get it. I don't understand why you would be against that. That's a form of the nanny state taking over, hypothetically, and stopping businesses and people who are free to choose to enslave themselves to not be able to do so. I hate that, which is why, by the way, Rothbard and other libertarians unironically have talked about this and have argued on behalf of this. Like, actual fucking big brain, 5-head libertarians have pontificated endlessly on some of the more important matters, like selling your child. Should parents be able to sell their children in the free market of children? Will that actually improve the lives of children in general? For those of you, for those parents who want to purchase children, I'm not even kidding. Look this shit up if you don't believe me. Or being able to sell your own body into slavery, into indentured servitude. The reality of this, of course, that's often overlooked is the pressure of not being able to survive if you don't have a job. We never talk about that. That's always not considered. and any form of social control, any form of social safety nets that alleviate some of that tension is considered to be negative by people like Ben Shapiro, regardless.
Are still a thing. I mean, the fact is that there are wages that people cannot charge because people will not take the jobs for those wages. I mean, that does exist. And by the way, if you're worried about wages being depressed, then there's a case to be made that one of the things we should be worried about is cracking down on businesses that are using illegal immigration in states like California, for example.
Yeah, illegal immigration only exists in states like California, and definitely like the chicken factory in fucking Kentucky is not straight up reliant on undocumented labor that they can immediately fucking push out with ICE agents the moment that they demand back pay, or you know, the moment that they demand that they don't get sexually harassed on the fucking on the line when they're working. You know, that sort of thing. That never happens anywhere else. It's just California illegal immigrants. He literally said, for example, no, the reason why he's mentioning California in his fucking, for example, is because it's a culture point talking point. Okay. That's a culture war talking point. That's why he says places like California have illegal immigrants. Like, no, bitch. They have undocumented labor everywhere in this country. Undocumented labor is the backbone of American agricultural production. Without undocumented immigrants, we would have no agricultural production. That is the sad fucking reality. And the way to solve that is not by arguing endlessly on the minimum wage. There is a separate solution for that. And that separate solution exists, okay? You make the undocumented labor force documented and allow them to organize. That way, they will no longer create a permanent underclass that can be used and weaponized against the documented labor force. But you don't want to do that because the business owners that line up your fucking pockets genuinely need undocumented immigrants to consistently to continue to exist, so they can use that as a negotiation against the American documented labor force and say, hey, if you don't like it, like, someone else is going to take your fucking job.
But what would you say to the argument for monopsony, which even Friedman argues? Now, in fairness, he says this is a rare case, and he was against minimum wage, I mean, just in fairness. But he says, look, there are cases where you have one or two employers in a town, and they're not.
The thing that, like, fucking Ben Shapiro and other conservatives love to do is take one problem, a separate problem that requires a separate solution, and jam it against another problem to say, we just simply cannot solve this. And it's a very frustrating argument. And a lot of people who have like anti-progress points of view, whether they're liberals themselves or fucking diehard conservatives, they do this. They constantly fucking use other issues. Like, they'll say something along the lines of, okay, well, what about all the debt that you take on to become a doctor? If we were to do free healthcare, then we can't pay doctors as much as we normally would. And ultimately, like, that's really inappropriate. No one's going to want to be a doctor and take on $200,000 in debt just so they can, you know, get paid much lower than they actually should be getting paid. Okay, then you're making a fucking argument as to why college should be fucking free, so no one is taking on $300,000 in debt. That is a separate problem that requires a separate solution. Which I agree with, by the way. That's why you can't have free healthcare without free college, especially for medical, for MDs.
Charging a competitive price because you don't have the choice to go to 4 or 5 different employers. And in those cases, it's a market failure. That certainly seems as one case. And then we can disagree about negotiating. But I guess the broader point for, in my view, Ben, is because I believe in entrepreneurship. I believe in innovation. I believe in capitalism. I call myself a progressive capitalist. Is when we're producing such incredible wealth, trillions of dollars in my district, the ability to have people earn.
Dude, medical degrees require a lot of resources. Yes, that's why famously in countries with socialized medicine, they don't have any doctors. Like, so you're right. In countries where they have socialized medicine and subsidized college, they just don't have any doctors. Like, they literally, when you go and visit the hospital in the UK, right, where college is way more affordable and they have an NHS system, they simply look at you and go, I don't know what you're doing here, bruv. Why are you at hospital if you require medical care, bruv? What you need to do is get acupuncture, bruv. And you're like, well, I just got shot. I just got shot in the gut. Can you please save me? And they're like, yes, we're going to engage in holistic medicine, bruv, right now. All right. Get together in a circle and stop praying, bruv. Like, that's how it works. Just do fucking acupuncture, bruv.
A wage that allows them to live a decent life seems to be something that's good.
Okay, maybe not shot, but like stabbed in the gut, because I said the UK. Another super communist thing that they have in the UK is a lack of guns. Really fucked up, honestly, if you ask me.
Democracy.
Yeah, I mean, my counterpoint is that we are not producing incredible wealth. These companies are producing incredible wealth because they know how to run the business better than members of government who are, getting their salary from me, frankly, and from these businesses that actually are paying extraordinary levels of tax. Representative Khanna, I really appreciate you coming on the program, and it's great to have conversations like this. So thank you for reaching out, because you reached out after I think I noted something on the show about your comments, and so it's great to have you on to clarify your position on this, and I think it's really important to do it. So again, just want to thank you for your time.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate your having a very civil, reasonable.
Why was he so happy to talk about the businesses being smart? Yeah, businesses paying taxes is the funniest joke that Ben Shapiro's ever told. Bro, imagine being a business and paying taxes in America. What are you, stupid?
One place we agree upon is you said that I read somewhere that you believe rational debate is what's necessary in our democracy. And I wish we had more exchanges like that.
Why do conservatives arguably intelligent as Ben Shapiro use this list of preposterous talking points when the only argument against increasing the minimum wage is business owners raising prices and causing inflation, especially since that argument can't be countered by progressives? No, that argument can be countered by progressives, and you engage in measures like increasing taxes to combat some of these issues. Only small businesses pay taxes. I mean, that's kind of true. Small businesses do pay taxes in comparison to fucking big businesses, which don't.